Welcome to the Stanford MBA two-generational wisdom bridge across 30 years. I'm your host, Catherine Keogh McLennan from the MBA class of 1995 of Stanford. In each episode, I bring together one of my classmates, now in our 60s, give or take, and a member of the class of 2025, now in their 30s, give or take, and about to graduate into an entirely different world than we graduated in 1995. Back then, we finished our MBAs just as the internet was emerging. Today's grads are stepping into a future shaped by artificial intelligence, uncertainty, and we hope that we express possibility. These conversations bridge generations, share lessons, and spark reflections on leadership, life, and what's next. Let's dive in. Today, I'm joined by Jillian Leslie from the Stanford MBA class of 1995 and Mehek Mohan from the class of 2025. Jillian is a creative entrepreneur, podcast host, and digital business builder. Before co-founding MiloTree, a platform that helps content creators grow and monetize their audiences, Jillian worked as a screenwriter in Hollywood. She also hosts the Blogger Genius podcast, where for over 7 years, she's interviewed top minds in the world of digital entrepreneurship. Her journey blends storytelling, tech, and a deep understanding of what today's audiences need. Mehek is a second-year MBA student at Stanford GSB with a background in molecular biology and AI-driven healthcare. After leading automation projects at Genentech, she's now building Kahani, a personalized, tech-enabled eating disorder recovery platform. Combining her experience in biotech and product innovation with a mission to destigmatize mental health, Mehek is pushing the boundaries of how digital companions and microtherapies can support meaningful healing. Together, Jillian and Mehek explore how storytelling, technology, and entrepreneurship are reshaping mental health, recovery, and what it means to connect with others across generations and digital platforms. It's a conversation about creativity, courage, and designing tools that speak to the human experience. So, Mehek, tell us where you are.
I'm sitting here in our pass down with, I have 9 roommates and a dog. It's a huge house on the intersection of Redwood City and Menlo Park. It is the first day of the quarter, of our last quarter of GSB. So we are very, very excited and a bit nostalgic. I spent the full day working on my startup, which I'm building with my amazing co-founder who is not at Stanford. It is an eating disorder recovery platform, thinking about, digital components to your care team, something I'm very passionate about. It looks beautiful. My co-founder is an absolute genius and one of my best friends. So he is nearby, he commutes, and we're able to work on this together. And I am gearing up to head to the law school advanced negotiations class, which starts today. So I thought I would take some classes across the street. Why not use this quarter to try that out?
Jillian, where do we find you?
So I am in Austin, Texas.
All right. And what are you up to on this Wednesday, Jillian?
So I build online businesses with my husband. And I also have a podcast called the Blogger Genius podcast that I have been recording for 7 years. So go check that out. And really, I help content creators monetize. I help them grow their audiences and I help them sell products and services to their audiences. And so it's and a lot of our customers are moms. And so it's really fun because I understand what that is all about.
Oh, Jillian, that's amazing. We definitely didn't have content creators in the 1995 world. I mean, we had plenty of content, but they were probably almost handwriting their books. But I don't know what percentage of our class actually had laptops, but a lot of us were going into the computer labs to use the computers, and the internet had just sort of emerged and was emerging with Netscape going public in 1995. That was kind of the first internet service, Mehek. So we like to talk about sometimes how ancient our service was, but I want to talk about what content creation is in a moment, because here you guys are. Now, Mehek, before we do that, let's talk about the eating disorder and how you're going to what do you even call it? Like how do we say what you're doing? Describe that a little bit.
Of course, I'm so happy to. This is very near and dear to my heart. So, the company is called Kahani. It's a Hindi word that means story. And I really believe that it's so important to have people feel empowered to write their own recovery journey stories. And that's why we've built the platform that we built. Essentially, you have all of these parts of your care team that integrates with, your medical providers. But recovery happens every minute of every single day. It's not Tuesdays at 4 p.m. with your therapist or your dietitian, right? And so as we think about the digital age and how much time our generation and the generation below me, I am still technically a millennial, the last on the list, spends time on their phones and on social media. There's a lot of diet culture speak. There's a lot of content that's very harmful in thinking about our body image, our self-esteem. And for very personal reasons, this is something that I wish existed for a couple of my best friends who went through a pretty brutal but successful recovery journey. And this is something where thinking of your digital companion, we never thought about that in healthcare before. I came from the world of healthcare. I worked in pharma beforehand. My co-founder is a tech genius, and together we thought, why can't we bring gaming to recovery, gaming to healing? There's something really exciting about building a product that is beautiful and engaging. And that is something that doesn't really exist in the healthcare space, and certainly not in the eating disorder sphere. And so we thought we would take the best concepts of gaming and product design and user experience and turn that into microtherapy skill sets that are deeply personalized to each individual's unique behaviors, triggers, or coping mechanisms that maybe may not serve them anymore. So think of it like a circuit breaker that's with you 24/7, deeply personalized, because we have the beauties of AI to lean on and use in this day and age. And so it's something that I hope will impact millions of lives, because this is a really big problem. Someone dies every 52 minutes, and it's about 10% of the US that's affected. And it's still a highly stigmatized space. So most people don't know that. And this is something that you probably know someone struggling with an eating disorder, or maybe you've experienced that yourself.
Yeah.
This is supposed to help kind of be where depression and anxiety were 10 years ago, where it was very stigmatized and now people talk about it. And so my hope is that we can speed that process up for eating disorders too.
Jillian, if Mehek was your client, what would the content creation person do? How does that work?
Well, I think the personal piece of this, like for potentially, I don't know if you've experienced an eating disorder, but you seem like, you've got people close to you who have. And here's the thing, people relate to people, and people want to hear stories from others who've been on that journey, who are what I like to say is, not when we're thinking about sharing content, sharing about our lives, you don't want to share the pain, the gaping wound that you might have in that moment, but you do want to share the scar.
Yeah.
So when you've passed through and now you've come out the other end, and again, life is always a journey and it's always about learning. But when you have those nuggets, you want to go, hey, I see you. I know where you are. I've been there. It was awful for me too. But here's the new place that I'm at and you can get to.
I love it. And so when we look at this whole world of content creation, Jillian, and we look at the last 30 years, and it's way more, Mehek, it sounds like it's even more than content creation, because you're looking at healing. I love that word. But if you look at just on a business sense, content creation, Jillian, let's zoom back to 30 years ago.
So before, I don't know if you know this, but before I got to the GSB, I was working in Hollywood. And after the GSB, I moved to LA and I became a writer. So I was a writer and I wrote TV and I wrote film.
Because you and Al were amazing together in improvisation. And in fact, I just got a text from Al because he's going to be joining one of these with one of your colleagues, Joel, who I also understand is improvisation.
I love Joel. He's
Heck, was you're taking classes across the street at the law school. I took improv, directing, all these other classes across. Well, they were like right by where our old GSB was. And so really, it's funny because I had gone undergrad to Stanford and I was so serious and I worked really hard and I didn't have a ton of fun. So by the time I got to business school, I was like, screw this. My grades don't matter. I just have to pass my classes. I'm going to relive, do a do-over. And so that was really, it was great. And I think that some of the classes, like my improv was so valuable and has been so valuable. The other class that, I don't know if you remember this, Kath, we had a class on the Enneagram.
I didn't know we had a class on the Enneagram. Oh my
An
gosh.
entire real class, and it was on the Enneagram.
How did I miss that?
I don't know, but it was great. And like, honestly, like I would be like, I like type everybody since the class. So those, and I don't know, Mehek, do you know what the Enneagram is?
I do know what it is, but we don't have that class.
It's like a personality typing class. And what they would do is every class they'd go, okay, here's what we're going to have a bunch of ones come in and they would all like be in a panel. Okay, today we're going to have twos. And then the goal of the class was for you to figure out by the end of it what you were and like who the people closest to you were. I went to Hollywood and I became a writer. And then, so I've always been about storytelling and creating content. It's just shifted. And now I build software with my husband.
How awesome is that? So tell us, because if I have an eating disorder and I'm going to use, what are we going to call it? Your platform, your app,
we can call it your recovery bestie.
Recovery bestie. Okay. So I'm going to have a relationship with what? My bestie. Is it going to be through, how does this work? And it's so related to storytelling, isn't it? And tips and
So this is something that I think is really interesting that I've been noodling on a lot. And I'm super curious, Jillian, your perspective on this. But with the rise of AI, a lot of the things that we've been thinking about is, at least earlier on, was this idea of empathy, right? And how there's this camp that AI will never be able to replace humans because of this idea of empathy. And then there were some papers that came out that really, really changed my perspective on this concept around the perception of empathy. And as long as you feel like you feel seen and you feel heard, then it doesn't really matter who you're getting it from. And there's some data now that shows that in, randomized studies, you see this where, people are even more receptive to AI because they can, especially in the medical space, can spend more time with you. It can keep going back and forth. It can give you all those words of affirmation that a doctor who can spend 7 minutes of time with you can't do. And so that's something that we've been really thinking about in our both text and voice-based elements of the app, where in these 90-second to 2-minute long tasks that are really just supposed to help you be a little bit more introspective on what brings you to the app today, what's going on, what stressors exist, you get to have this text exchange that's rooted in evidence-based therapies so that you're actually learning a skill set and being able to apply it directly to external stimuli.
Okay, so I'm going to get on there, and it's a Wednesday. And what's my 90 seconds? What am I going to get? Let's just play it through. What am I going to ask?
Yeah. So you're going to go in there and the app's going to say, hi, what brings you here today? How are you doing? And we're going to use this, at least initially, paired with a specific behavior or coping mechanism that you're working on.
Give me one.
So let's say lunchtime is really, really hard and you tend to engage in behaviors that are maybe more restrictive around lunchtime. So it's noon comes around, it's Wednesday, and we know that we're about to sit down for lunch and we're already starting to have those difficult thoughts. You'll come in and you'll say, hey, I'm having a hard time. It's lunchtime and I just don't feel like I want to have this meal. So the app might say, okay, let's talk through a little bit more. Where is this coming from? How often has this happened? And the more you use it, the more it'll start to learn your patterns and say, oh, we know that this is something that you struggle with at this time. So now let's recommend a skill set for you to do. So one of my favorite skill sets is rooted in CBT, and it's called putting your thoughts on trial. So what is evidence for and evidence against that thought? And it's really helpful because it just helps you to create a little bit more of a balanced perspective. So maybe when we have this elevated sense of self where we think that we're going to be 100% right in whatever we're thinking about, it's helpful to take a step back and another perspective and then really be able to weigh it and say, okay, I guess there is an opportunity to think about this thought in a different way. So maybe it'll force you to say, I don't want to eat because this is going to ruin my self image for today. And maybe the alternate thought to that is I'm nourishing my body. This energy is going to allow me to go to this event after school, which I've been really looking forward to. So that perspective then helps you think, okay, it may not work at the get-go, and we know behavior change takes time, but it's starting to build that muscle of, okay, we can start to understand one perspective and another perspective and start to kind of come to common ground. Again, kind of like that circuit breaker. And they're supposed to be quick because we know your attention span's kind of going to be limited.
Yeah, nowadays. But it's interesting, Jillian, because if you go back to the storytelling, that would have been fantastic to do. Well, you guys probably did that in improvisation and writing and, became different characters altogether.
Yes. Well, again, that's what lights me up. It's interesting, Mehek, though. I was just with my mother, who is a clinical psychologist, and I was showing her, how you can talk to ChatGPT, which is different than when you type, and how powerful it was. And we were talking about it as a way to do therapy. And my mom said, "Oh my God, this is incredible." Now, my mom's retired. She's not worried about like losing clients or anything to ChatGPT. But she said something that I thought was really interesting. She said, I think this could be so powerful because I bet you people will be more honest with the AI than they would be with their therapist. Because even though their therapist is supposed to be neutral, you're still performing in many ways for your therapist. So she saw it from this whole cool perspective. And there was an article I read recently about how people are using Claude for relationship advice. For some reason, Claude seems to be the AI that's the go-to for that because
I love it.
So anyway, so I see this, like, I think it's not just in the future, this is now.
Yeah. And actually a really cool part of that too is a few of us are doing this here at the GSV, which might sound kind of crazy, but also completely uncoordinated. It's not like we told each other about this. Even better. So one of my best friends at the GSB, Mark, and my boyfriend, who's also at the GSB, Leaf, I actually met him here last year, and I all kind of have our journals and kind of like journal entries written online. So we have like Google Docs, we have a bunch of, a long log of everything about ourselves. And we all kind of uploaded that into ChatGPT and we're like, let's just create mini versions of ourselves to be able to be thought partners that are actually relevant to ourselves. And it's been awesome because it really, really gives you that feedback and it knows your history and so it's able to kind of pull and understand, okay, well, based on your patterns and based on your experiences, this is probably why you're feeling this way. It's so effective. So this whole idea of digital companions, and I'm speaking about this in the eating disorder space, but I mean, as we think about agentic AI and all of the new trends coming up, there's so much opportunity to be able to have that real-time buddy, like that, that little angel and devil on your shoulder for every single moment and every single task you could imagine.
Wait a minute. You used a term called, I missed it, eugentic AI? Was that the term?
Agentic
for agency. Okay. All right. Goodness gracious, Jillian. What would you do with this beautiful client if you had Mehek as your client, Jillian? What would you...
Well, I think she's doing a lot of really good things. I would just, again, I would start building in public. I would start sharing your story. I would start building your tribe of people who get you. And, and the other thing I would say, get a little spicy. Put some opinions out there that could be perceived as, I don't want to say controversial, but I do want to say where you put a stake in the ground and go, this is who I am and this is what I believe. Because the people then who totally disagree will be like, you are not my person. But the people who agree with you will feel so bonded to you. So we've lived in this world where everything's a little milquetoast and everything is safe and everything feels kind of like it's been like kind of you put a filter on it. And I would say, be willing to take some risks to bring the people to you who you know who could best benefit.
I love it. I love it.
I love that.
And Jillian, what if you had to describe, and how you've been in the business of content creation now with your husband for how many years? 9?
Oh my God, we started our first company in 2009. I don't know if you were
Right.
born yet, Mehek.
My gosh. Oh my gosh. Yes. So, but what prompted you to do this in 2009?
So I was working in Hollywood. I was writing movies, and I had a movie that was about to get made, and then it fell apart, not because of me, but because I had my daughter. And that to me, I all of a sudden said, I don't care about being in meetings with celebrities anymore. Like I have a bigger job. I'm Lainey's mom, and it shifted everything. And I said to my husband, who at the time was head of product at MySpace back in the day, I'm like, you know what? Let's build something ourselves. So as a side project, we built a site called Catch My Party, and we've grown it into the largest party ideas site on the web with user-generated content. And initially, we built this site for teen girls because my husband's working at MySpace. I'm writing teen girl comedies. So it's like, okay, this is like, these are our people. And then I learned a very important lesson, which is it got really weird because we had this platform and I'm stalking like teen girls on the internet going, hey, I'm a 30-something-year-old mom. Like, would you put your party photos up on my site? And nobody would. However, moms with Etsy shops who created beautiful parties and wanted to sell their party supplies started putting their party photos up on our site. And we initially were like, oh no, we've attracted the wrong audience. We need to delete all this content. And then we took that step back and said, whoa, wait a second, maybe this is our audience. These are the people. And so we leaned into it and figured out how to serve them better. And I think that is something that was one of the first lessons that we learned, that you're co-creating. You think you know, but it's very humbling because you put it out there and then you get people's reactions. Like, heck, I hope you're putting your app in front of people all the time and saying, what do you think? What do you think? How would you improve this? Because it's like getting so close to your customers so that and to hear how they talk about it in their language, using their language back at them.
Heck, I mean, how do you do that? What have you been doing? Have you been doing this for the last 2 years in addition to taking classes across in law school and taking corporate finance and taking what are our other favorite ones? Not the Enneagram, but
I know. Touchy-feely, MGE. Oh yeah. So I came into business school knowing I wanted to start a company in the healthcare space. And so that was my goal. I didn't actually officially start working on it really until the summer when I got the IDIF stipend. So that it basically allowed me a sponsorship to go explore and do entrepreneurship for the summer. So my co-founder and I moved to New York, and we had such a fun time because the initial maybe 3 or 4 months of us building was all of these ideas we had that we ran by, a couple of our close friends. And, there's this book called The Mom Test that almost everyone has read when it comes to, right? And so, your close friends will tell you this is awesome. And, our friends who are in recovery are like, oh, I totally would have used that when I was, in recovery. And so we're like, oh, great. We're so excited. We have such good feedback. And then he and I being, having so much fun brainstorming, and he has just such a beautiful visual mind. We got really carried away with all of our visuals and everything. And then we got to the point where we were like, is this what people actually want? Are people going to keep using this? And so we started showing it to people. We had a whole bunch of people download it. And then our engagement metrics were a little low. And we're like, people aren't really coming back to the app. So we started thinking more about like, what is good game design? What are core loops? How do we make sure that there's an incentive and a reward for people to come back each time? Because this isn't like a normal game. It's not, we say that something controversial, I guess our take on recovery is that it should feel like play. Now, most people think play has to be fun all the time. Our take is that play is not always fun. It's challenging, rewarding, engaging. And it can be fun sometimes, but it's not always fun. And this is tiring work. I mean, you're confronting self-limiting beliefs and talking through urges and relationships that may not serve you. It's not always easy work in this app. And so how do we make it more engaging? So then we started doing really rapid experimentation. And so he would come up with a couple of ideas and we would think about the visuals for it. And then we would go ahead and show it to 10 to 15 people in our network who had all reached out to us that they were in recovery and wanted an extra resource. And we'd, iterate with them and make sure we were really, really building the right product and not overcomplicating it with so many cool features, because really thinking I just took the product market fit class with Andy Ratcliffe, and that was phenomenal. It was such a game changer in how I viewed, the early days of building. And so we stripped everything down. We said, okay, we're just going to build the one thing that people are really, really desperate to buy. And that is how we kind of started getting a better focus, a better design, and a really tight engagement and collaboration with the end users. And that was something that has been really perspective altering, because these people are amazing and their journeys are so different. And it's so important to honor that to the best of our abilities in the app.
Interesting to me as I listen to this, to the class of 2025, is the creation of ideas. That's what you and the likes of Al and many of you were awesome at. And when we look at most of our classmates, including me, when we went back to consulting, or we went back to investment banking, or we went to, say, big corporates, and a lot of that was problem solving. So we were given the problem, and then we were to use our smarts and our analytics to respond to the problem. But what I noticed in this generation, and you by default, Jillian, this huge creativity, I'm not sure we got that muscle, except for you guys trying to show us how to do it. So it's really interesting, Jillian, to watch these guys.
For me, okay, so my job after college, I went and I worked at Disney in their strategic planning department. And I hated it. I hated it. And I thought to myself, you are renting my brain Monday through Friday. Like, you tell me what to do and the spreadsheets and stuff, and I could put these numbers in, but any smart person could do this job. There's nothing Jill about it. And that for me was like death sentence. So I felt like I had a crisis at age 25, thinking, this is it. I worked so hard in high school, college, whatever, to be here, and this sucks. And so I had to figure out what made me tick. And what made me tick was creating. There's nothing. And then I think about it, and then I work on it, and then that sucks at the beginning, and then I keep iterating, and then it gets a little better and a little better, and then at the end, there's something there. And then that, it still couldn't be improved, but for me, that gave me like meaning and purpose. So I feel like it was my crisis, my midlife crisis at 25, that made me shift and say, like, between my first and second year, I worked at McKinsey, and I knew I wanted to be a writer. So I go to McKinsey and I go, hey guys, okay, great. This is cool. Like in LA, I'm only going to work here for like 8 weeks, because then I'd have enough money where I could spend the second part of the summer in my shitty apartment writing scripts. And they were like, what? Like, what do you mean? You like, we've never met anybody like you before. And I was like, no. I go, okay, just 8 weeks. That's all I want. And they let me do it. I give them credit. They really did. And they said to me afterwards, like, hey, if this whole writing thing doesn't work out, you could always come back. So I always knew in my back pocket that even though I was a starving screenwriter, that I had this as like a back, like just as something to do. But they so there I am at McKinsey, and like my, I don't know what he was called, engagement manager is like, hey, the people who do really well here are the people who like to think about complex business problems in the shower. Now, the truth is, like, I have my own companies that I build, and I do like thinking about complex business problems in the shower. However, I was working on this case for Hunt Wesson. I don't know if I can tell that, this 30 years ago. Like the tomato people, and whether they should transfer their tomato products via rail or and I was like, I do not want to think about this in the shower. I'm in the wrong place. But they were so nice and they were great. And I get how it was like a much better environment than, say, Disney, but it was like, this is not for me. So I learned that. So Mehek, I say, make sure you're checking in with yourself so that you go, yes, this is the right path for me. Because, that was like, it was painful. That was hard for me.
So the shift, though, from it was pharmaceutical, Mehek, right? The industry to where you're going, is that a gigantic shift? The way that Jillian's talking about?
Well, so I've always really been interested in healthcare. I studied molecular cell biology in undergrad at Cal. And then I went and I was at that time working in an incredible lab or on gene editing with Dr. Doudna right before she won the Nobel Prize. Like, it was one of the coolest times to be at Cal. And then in my senior year, I thought maybe I'd try my hand at entrepreneurship. And I thought about STD tests and how they are not personalized, like not at home. They're not real time or rapid. And there should really be, like pregnancy tests, a way to test for STDs at home in under 5 minutes. So I was building that tech as part of my thesis and thought, oh, this would be a great company. I was having a lot of fun, but I was also like 21 or 22 or something. And that was right when Theranos was blowing up, and being a female founder in microfluidic diagnostics specifically was literally the worst thing, especially because I was straight out of undergrad. So I really didn't know anything, but I really thought that it could be awesome, but I thought maybe it might be better to get some industry experience. So I went to pharma, and I was really, really lucky because I had a phenomenal team, a team that gave me so much accountability, so much responsibility, autonomy, empowerment. And I was able to lead some pretty awesome initiatives at a pretty young age. And I had the support behind my back that just gave me that feeling of, I can do this. And especially in an industry that sometimes moves a little bit more slowly. And I was able to work on some pretty cutting edge projects around using AI to improve our clinical trial workflows. And so that was really, really exciting to me. And I've always loved the health and sciences space. So I knew I wanted to stay in that space in business school. And that coming to this idea was kind of a bit of a runaround way. I had two other ideas that I started off with. And ultimately, to your point, Jillian, I wasn't the right person to build those products. The initial two that I had started with, my first few ideas in this space, like, I wasn't the person to make that come to life. And I think if you want to build something really impactful and lasting in healthcare, you really have to care about the topic. And so I had a bit of a come to Jesus moment. I was soul searching for myself. And I sat with my co-founder, Brandon, and I was like, Brandon, we need to work on something that we both really care about and that we can commit to for long, long periods of time. And that's how we landed on this is, we both share a friend who's in a beautiful place in recovery now. And I have, a couple other more deeper personal experiences with some of my loved ones. And, we just agreed, like, this is something that we can really do together and we can do it well. And so that's kind of how we got there. But it was a bit of a roundabout way. I mean, initially we were doing like a parent app and then a medical triage app. I'm not a parent, I'm not a doctor. So those things didn't really work out.
Gosh, Jillian. I mean, and of course, it all changes, as you suggested, when you do become, or if you have the opportunity to become a mother. And, so what's that transition like now that we raise it? What happens?
Okay, so this is funny. I was at the GSB so my daughter is graduating high school right now, and she's going to be a freshman at Stanford next year.
No way.
So, yeah. So we were visiting the campus in June, and she was like, she hadn't gotten in or anything, but she was meeting up with a friend from high school. So they met at Coupa at the business school. And so I had like time to spare. So I had my laptop, and I sit at a table that has an outlet underneath it with like some second years, I guess. And like, I go, hey, like, I'm like this old lady sitting there, and I go, and then I'm listening though to them talk about their summers, right? Because this was like June, right at the end of last year. And then I turned to them, and I don't know why, but well, maybe because it's also my personality. And I go, hey guys, I went to the GSB, and they were like, oh, not really that interested. And I go, can I like give you some advice?
Here we go.
And they were super nice. And they go, yeah. Because I said, I remember this. I remember the sweat and the freak out over what you're going to do for your summer. And I said, I have a lot of perspective on this. And I want you to know it's so not as important as you think it is. So just please know that, because you will look back and I said, please pay it forward that when you're out, so many years, you'll come back and remind, because I said there's something in the group think at the GSB where we got there, Kath. And I remember I ended up spending my summer at McKinsey. Why? Because everybody spent their summer at McKinsey. It wasn't that I had a deep love for McKinsey or consulting. So, stepping out so there is this pressure, and most people don't know what they think their first job, let's say, out of business school is going to be so important. And the truth is, and they go, most people stay at their first job for 2 years. And it's yeah, but not me. Because for me, this is going to be determinant of my entire life. So what I said to them is, I said, what you're going to find, at least for me, and Kath, I'd love to know what you think, it becomes about chapters.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So, and it's not necessarily this smooth thing, this continuous thing where you move in one direction. It's literally chapters, whether they be based on a relationship, whether they be based on a job, whether they be based on where you live, whether they be based on when you have children. And so to think that way, I thought was nobody told me this. So for example, I was a writer in Hollywood. Okay, that was 12 years of my life, and that was a chapter. And then I've started companies, and I've had a daughter. And so it's just it makes every chapter then less, there'll be another chapter.
With plenty of disasters, at least in terms of career and personal, as far as I'm concerned.
Things explode, or somebody gets sick, or you mess it up, whatever, you get fired. And so I think having that perspective. Now, again, Mehek, you're whoa, all right, that could be for you guys, but do just do park that somewhere in the back of your mind. And for me, for example, I was just actually at lunch today with a friend of mine who went to the GSB, but she's much younger than us, Kath. She's 5 years younger. So it feels like a different time. But we were talking about this, which is the book. When we were when I was a young mother, the book Lean In came out.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
And it was hey, and I had a friend, I was telling this to my friend at lunch, but I had a friend we were living in Palo Alto, and I had a friend who went to Harvard Business School, and she had worked at Bain, and now she had a kid in my kid's class. And we both looked at each other secretly and were I don't want to lean in. I don't want to go work at Procter and Gamble and go be in the C-suite or work my way up and not be there to be able to be home with my daughter. And she's me too. Now, ultimately, she's this real estate tycoon now, and she has all these Airbnbs, but meaning we both were that doesn't fit us anymore. We don't want to be in corporate America. There's Sheryl Sandberg going, lean in you, because you need to make space for other women. And I'm I want to be with my kindergartner. I want to be there at the end of the day when I want to work, but I want to work at home, and I want to be flexible enough that I could be there and have dinner with my kindergartner. So I don't know about you, Kath, but those are the things where I never in business school thought I would want that. I was so no way, I'm going to be in the C-suite. I'm going to be like Martin Scorsese. That was my vision. And then you go, all right, I'm okay not being Martin Scorsese because my daughter drew this amazing picture today in kindergarten.
I know. I love that. But if you go back, one of the cool things is this conversation that Jillian's describing. And because in your generation, you're saying at the cusp of the millennials and about to turn, how do you see the elder generations? Do you experience them in your family? Is there a connection? I think you must have it with the professors, hopefully at Stanford. They're giving you perspective. How do you experience that? And maybe how does it help you in your business ideas?
Yeah, I feel so grateful to have the advice. Jillian, Kath, your advice is so amazing. And being in an environment where we can learn from people who've walked the path is something that is something I don't take lightly. I absolutely love some of my professors. I've been able to form deeper relationships with a few of them, and that's something that has been very transformative. I also think nowadays, I think in business school, I think it's so easy to see the next shiny thing and think, oh, could that be for me? Could that be for me? And so I made a pretty conscious decision after my fall quarter of my first year to stop doing that and focus on the thing that I wanted to do so I could maximize the time that I have here. And so in that process though, when I focused on entrepreneurship, that opened up a whole other can of worms because it was like, well, how do you do that? How do you start a company and how do you do it right, and what are all the pitfalls? And you go to all these brown bag lunches and all these VCs come to campus and they tell you one thing and another thing, and some of it's conflicting advice, some of it's really just vague high level advice, and some of it's just you got to do it to learn it kind of thing. And some advice that I've started to really enjoy now is, I guess, advice that's a little bit couched with, this was my experience at this point in my life because this was what's going on in my life. Now, that might not be the case for you. If it is, this lean in to this advice. If it isn't, throw it away. And I like that a lot because it gives, I think, the consumer a little bit more flexibility in and a little less pressure around this is the way I should go. Because I think our brains are highly malleable at this point in time. And we all come in with these conceptions of who we are. And just like in college and just like in high school, we come back to an environment where there's a lot of groupthink, as you said, and there's a lot of pressure to be the archetypal X or Y coming out of business school, be that a consultant or be that an entrepreneur or any range of careers in between. And so I find it very beautiful to engage with different generations, and I love hearing the perspectives, but mostly I love hearing the stories because I think there's more to take away from the stories, more so than necessarily the negative advice, because I think advice, even when I give advice to like high school students, it's all rooted in some bias I have of how it worked out for me. And how it works out is some function of effort and luck. And we don't really know how those are weighted in this world, right? And so I think there's an element of, I'd rather just hear like what was exciting for you and why did you make those decisions? So I like the process part of it more so than the output part of it.
No, I love that, Mehek. And it's interesting with you guys, Jillian. I think the statistics for these classes now, for the graduating people, are so different from ours. I think it's more like, you tell me, Mehek, it's like 70% of you are starting your businesses and 30% are going into companies or consulting. And so the very invitation, I mean, for us, Jillian, I think it was all about building these platforms, not so much taking the content and putting them on platforms that exist. But, one of our classmates was building or found the Hotmail process. And, another one sort of built the eBay platform. And so what's really cool about your class is that it's very social cause. I mean, I haven't met one of you that's not talking about the environment or the recovery process or the Medicaid, how they're going to, work with the Medicaid on the platforms and the technology that exist. And so that's what I'm finding, Jillian, as we watch these generations, and they have so much to teach us. What do you think? What are we going to learn from these guys the other way around?
Well, I just love their spirit. I just love their can do. And because you guys have access to so much in terms of tools and things, like you could build things in a weekend, and like we could never have done that. And that is so empowering. It's like amazing. So I love the creativity watching you guys create.
And that is the skill. And Mehek, if you look at the business school, and obviously you're talking about hard skills. I mean, we were back in doing our systems class was learning how to do a very basic spreadsheet that sort of, showed us how to do supply and demand or whatever. But as you look at the business school, what you're getting ready last quarter, what do you think the critical things that you picked up on the way? What do you leave with and you go, wow, that made such a difference in where I'm heading?
Ooh, I love that question. It's so perfect as I start this next quarter too. It's like how am I grounding myself in the things that I've learned and how to make the most of this last quarter? Okay, things I've learned is that so much of business school is your network, as everyone says. But all the way from high school to college, you're building this muscle of how to understand who might be in your orbit and who might not be, and what kind of values you share and how to define what those values are. And there's this balance between defining your values and staying within that realm, but then also saying yes to things and being open-minded and trying out all sorts of new things. And there's a real balance there. And I think it's really easy to lose that and accidentally maybe either say yes to a lot of things and throw your values away, or stick too rigidly into your values and miss a lot of new opportunities. And so it really is a muscle that I almost felt like I had to retrain in terms of how do you select the people who you think might be there for the long haul, 30, 40, 50 years later. A lot of that ebbs and flows, and a lot of that you might be wrong in. And we're not used to being wrong in that sense because we trained that muscle and we thought, cool, good, done. We have our friends. And now you come here and you think, well, how do you maximize the ability to form new super strong ties, but then also make sure you're spending enough time in the weak ties who you'll be able to call on years and years later and catch up, but maybe who you don't call crying one day, right? And so I think that has been a really interesting lesson. And the second one being that it's so easy to take for granted being here once you get here, but from the outside looking in, this was the golden path. This was like the thing that, I was so hungry to get to. And so a big, big thing that I'm really excited about this experience and that I've taken away is not losing that hunger and not losing that mindset around using every resource you can to the best of your abilities. Emailing that person you think will never respond, but who probably will because of your Stanford EDU email. Talking to professors who I read books about, like that I was so excited to talk to, who are in like engineering and med school. And I thought, oh, well, like I would never be able to connect with them. But I'm at Stanford now and I can just email them and say, hey, I loved your book. And then they invite me over to their house to talk about it. That would never happen in any other world. And so it's this like element of keeping the childlike wonder and awe alive, I think.
And bravery to send that, to press send, to send the email. Because you don't know.
This is the kind of thing I just want to sit at your feet, Mehek, and you just tell me, remind me, no, seriously, and send my children to listen because they're your age. My daughter's getting married this year, and I want her to listen to this because the wisdom that you're gaining and have gained is phenomenal for all of us. So, really, gosh, I had tears listening to you. I don't know. What do you think, Jillian?
Yes, no, absolutely. I do feel like this is this special time and soak up everything, while you're there, because then I don't know, it is about kind of like recognizing though that like you will continue to just reinvent yourself throughout your journey. And like Kath, you can speak to, because I remember when you spoke at our reunion.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh my God. It's like then life comes in and like sends you down a path that you might not expect. And it's just about kind of, I don't know, rolling with it or recognizing that we like, I remember us as like newly minted MBAs and like, no, like we're good. Like life's not going to come. Like we're not going to slip on the karmic banana peel. Like, no. We know better because we know how to do math. We know what a Kager. We know what a Kager is. I don't even know what it is anymore.
What's interesting, what's interesting, Mehek, was, and this is where I'm really interested in just your understanding as I listen to you get this app up, and really start to understand recovery, because we were in the first 5 years of our reunion, we're like, okay, and such started this incredible company, and this,
and he's a billionaire,
and then the rest of us are going, shit.
My God, I'm a loser. I'm a total loser.
But nobody would voice that, right? So by the time we got to our, whatever it was, I think it was our 20th or something, I'm like, you know what? Screw that. I'm going to tell you how I just, descended into the pits of my own recovery story and my own, my own dealings with the fact that, hey, I'm not that Stanford typical graduate. And I think, Jillian, what's really interesting in our last reunion, there were no business stories.
Yes.
It was all about people's personal journeys, of which some of which was just extraordinary.
Yes.
And what I like about, Mehek, what you're doing is you're already tapping in, and many of your classmates are already asking that question, which is, okay, technology exists, but how can it help you with social issues? How can it help us with education issues? How can it help with political issues? So you guys must have some amazing conversations about that. What it really means. That we were having, Jillian, like in our own places, not in the business school courtyard.
Well, here's what I think. Have you gone, Kath? How many reunions have you gone? Have you missed any?
I only, interestingly, went to the last 3 because I was like, I can't go to those ones. I'm going to be like a failure compared to those people. I was actually quite frightened to go. I was like, well, I can't show up. But the last 3 have been just incredible.
Like, I have this analogy. So I've been to all of them except one. I think I missed our 10th. And it's kind of like, you're right. Like, I don't know if you did go to the first one where it was and then here the billion, Jeff Skull is billionaire. And I'm in my crappy apartment in Brentwood writing scripts. Like, no, I was between jobs. I hadn't met my husband yet. So I was just like, fuck, this sucks. But then after that, like every reunion, I feel like, like a stream kind of runs over like rocks, and over time it smooths the rocks. We're those rocks. And so in like 5-year reunion, we're pokey and we're like, I'm going to take on the world and I'm going to be freaking amazing and I'm going to make $1 billion. And then over time though, like life comes in, Kath, as you know.
It does.
And then all of a sudden you get softened or you get smoothed over. And you're right. At our last reunion, it was like, oh my God, I've had cancer. Or, oh my God, my spouse died. Or, oh my God, my kid has autism. And you just go, whoa. And it doesn't matter that I'm a financier in Singapore. Like that becomes so not as important. But your 2 kids who have autism becomes a much bigger deal.
A much bigger deal.
It's like it becomes more heart-centered. Wouldn't you agree?
I totally agree. And you guys are already picking it up. I'd love to hang out with you, like instead of going to the parties that were happening on like the phone parties that I think you guys are still having, and the LP. What are they? Liquid preference from LPS.
Yeah.
So as we kind of wind up the hour, if you almost step back and you reflected, on this very short little experience we're having, what are these type of conversations? How do we have them? And are they important? Of course, they're important, but what do you, even after the hour, what do you reflect at the end?
Man, this has been so amazing, and I'm so grateful for the time capsule that you've created by being able to do this. Like, it's something that I think about, like doing that in our class with the class 30 years under us, and it's such an incredible tradition that you've created because there is so much to learn, and also I just think it's really grounding at how much hasn't changed because we're human, and there are so many things that you thought 30 years ago that we think right now. And for better or for worse, I mean, some things probably should change, like the high school nature and clickiness nature of business school at times. But, it's also important to realize that as you both were saying, everything passes and things change, and you have to just make the most of the environment that you're in. And it's so important to hear that from people who've lived through it and are doing amazingly in their lives. And especially in a time when there's a lot of uncertainty on, is this going to work? Am I going to do the thing I want to do, or is it not going to work out? And so having that reminder is so beautiful. And it's just really special to remember that, humans are humans and will always be humans.
Goodness
and in
gracious.
30 years, you could be that like old mom sitting down at the table with the first years freaking out about their summers, thinking it's the most important thing ever. And you're going to go, hey guys, can I give you some feedback? Can I tell you that like
totally? And I almost think like something I'm almost thinking about is like, I never listened to that advice, right? Like, you don't listen to that advice when you're in high school or you're in college or even in business school. You don't listen to your older people's advice because you just want to like break things and figure it out yourself. And so I'm almost wondering if there's another type of like, how do you stay, and keeping that childlike sense of wonder and awe alive? Like, how do you stay connected to the younger generation so that you can be there with them through the journey and not necessarily offer solutions because they're probably not looking for solutions. They think they are. We think we are. But really, we're just looking to be heard and chat about some fun stories.
Thank you for joining us. For more insights and information, visit my website at katherinemclennan.com. That's spelled KATHARINEMCLENNAN.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the series so you know when the next episode will be as we continue exchanging wisdom, connecting past, present, and future through the perspectives of Stanford MBA graduates of 1995 and 2025.